evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Temple City Council meeting for Thursday, June the 3rd. If you'll please rise. Father Tom Chamberlain with Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church will lead us in prayer, and Chief Gary Smith will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Father?
Let us pray. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this meeting today, upon all of our city council members, and all of those who will be presenting their concerns here today. But we pray for a spirit of right judgment, of knowledge, of discernment, of courage, that all of these matters may be handled in a way that will give you glory, and will be for the true good of the people. So bless each and every one here present and all that will be speaking today. Help all to listen, and listen with your ears, that the best decisions may be made. And all of this we pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, thank you for being here and have a safe trip. Next item on tonight's agenda is an opportunity for public comment. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to the meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. No final discussion or final action. No discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. Several of you have signed up for items that we'll probably go ahead and have public hearing on. The CUP for the liquor store is posted for a public hearing. If you're signed up for public comment, you are welcome to speak during this portion, or you may defer your comments until the public hearing, which will be very shortly. So I will call your name, and then you can just defer to the public hearing if you'd like, or come forward. On the other item, which is the CUP for the land over in the Wildflower area, that we are not posted for a public hearing, but we will go ahead and have a public hearing on that tonight. There's a couple of folks that want to speak, and so we'll on that second reading, go ahead and have a public hearing again for anybody who'd like to make comments on that. First, Mr. Milton Hensley. That's not on an agenda item, so Mr. Hensley, if you'd like to come forward and make your comments, please, sir. Welcome. It's nice to have you back with us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. My name is Milton Hensley. I live at 301 Mitchell Drive, and I come before you tonight on behalf of preserving and restoring the Ma and Paul Ferguson home. This house has a large historical value for Temple and for the state of Texas. And I want to commend Alan Enderman and the Temple Clarks Foundation for their leadership in this effort, and for the local paper for the articles that they have carried on this house. They did an excellent job. This is a huge undertaking and must be supported by the city, county, state, and each person in the state. And I'm not asking that the city support this effort at this time in a monetary way, but just as a council, as a whole, done since the Ferguson house is in his district. There will be so many uses for the home once it is historically restored. Weddings, school events, social events, and a historic tourist point. Foremost, this was the home of the only husband and wife governor of Texas, and I'm going to say the United States. I don't know. It is the first home of the first woman governor of the state of Texas. The Fergusons were such an important part of Temple, and they continue to be an important part of Temple. Ma and Pa's home should belong to each person of the state of Texas. It will enrich Temple and each one of us. Each one of us must get behind this effort. For this is an important thing for Temple, to preserve and to restore the Ferguson home. I go by there every week, and it saddens my heart to see this home. And as y'all know, it's going to cost a lot of money. But it's going to be up to the individuals and interested parties to support this. And I think that each individual in Temple, Texas should help in this. I do thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley. Mr. John Mark Johnson, did you want to speak now or wait till the public hearing? I'll wait. Okay. Mike Grisham? Right? Si Long, I presume you'll wait, Si?
Yes.
And Mr. McGann? Sorry if I'm not reading your name correctly. On Sunflower?
It may be Vaughn.
Oh, is that Jim Vaughn? Sorry, Jim. Okay, Jim Vaughn?
I intended to be a doctor, but
Yeah. Prescription. Apologize. Okay, and Mr. and Mrs. Jefferson? You wait, okay. All right. And is that, you didn't indicate, is that on the CUP item that will be covered by public hearing? Is that what you're speaking of? Okay, great. That being the case, Mr. Hensley's comment will be the only comment from in this section. So the next item on the agenda is consent agenda. All items listed under this section are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council on any item, it may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member, and it will be considered separately. And this is item 3A through L today. I know we're going to pull item 3K for presentation and consideration. Are there any other items, council, that you wish to be removed from the consent agenda? Or if not, is there a motion for the consent agenda item 3A through L with the exception of item 3K?
Motion to approve item 3A through L with the exception of item K.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Motion is second. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Dunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Item 3K, second reading, consider adopting an ordinance amending Chapter 37, Traffic of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Temple by adding requirements for parking in residential yards. Mr. Mabry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll give an abbreviated presentation on this item, noting the changes that have occurred since you received your packets, and those changes being based on public input that we've received on this proposal. Some of the changes to the ordinance are to clarify the definitions of side yard and how that applies to the parking standards. Side yard in the draft before you is the area between the sides of the dwelling and the side property line, from the front of the dwelling to the rear of the building itself, front facade to rear facade. The side parking has to be aligned with any garage, carport, or garage that's been converted to a living space, unless it's parked on a curvilinear driveway. And this, the maximum percentage of paved area applies to the side yard in addition to the front. We also, as I mentioned, curvilinear, we revised the definition for what a curvilinear driveway is and inserted a diagram for an example of a curvilinear driveway. We also clarified that a three-car garage would also apply if it were a two-car garage with a third bay for a golf cart. There's flexibility in the draft for driveways and parking areas in front of the primary entrance. Normally, under standard conditions, that wouldn't be allowed, but the planning director has discretion to an extent to allow that to happen if the applicant can demonstrate a cause for that. Similarly, there are exceptions allowed for minimum driveway depth, that is from the front of the property line on toward the house of 8-10 feet. An applicant can request an exception to that for a lesser depth if there are circumstances related to lot size, topography, and things of that nature. In addition, there's an increased driveway width from 20 feet, as was in the previous draft, in width for a driveway for a single-family dwelling to 24 feet. Instead of the original 20. The planning and zoning and staff recommendation for this case is to approve the ordinance on second hearing. Both the commission and the staff recommend approval of this ordinance. And at this point, I can answer any questions that the council might have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mabry. Council, questions on the item?
Just so I'm clear, you increased the driveway width to 24 feet. It was 20. And is that at the curb, or is that at
the property line, which would be farther into the driveway than the curb?
Okay. But if they wanted to, let's say they had one of the vehicles, if there's a two-car garage and one of them was supporting a handicapped individual, they could make that driveway balloon out so that they'd have enough room that that person could unload on a...
Right, and there's flexibility for covering the percentage of the front of the house in pavement, so they could rely on that to allow for a wider flare to accommodate something like you described.
Okay, so then it's the percentage of covering of the front yard that would drive.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Questions?
I'll just, the three-car garage, if you have a three-car garage, you can put anything you want to in that third garage, can't you? Doesn't have to be just a golf cart. I'll have to go buy a golf cart.
It could be a two-car garage with, apparently, I guess, houses that are close to golf courses may have maybe a smaller smaller area for one car, but a bit larger than a two-car garage to accommodate their golf cart. And so if they had that, they would fall under being considered a three-car garage, although they wouldn't technically be three full cars.
Thank you, Brian.
Other comments or questions? Council, your pleasure on item 3K, second reading.
Motion to approve item 3K as presented.
Have motion and
Second.
a second. Okay, all right, great. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Dunn?
Aye.
Councilmember Tanzak?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
No.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 4 is a second reading. Consider adopting ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit to allow the display for sale in the commercial district on Lot 1, Block 1, Wildflower, Commerce 4, at 5615 Southwest HK. Mr. Mabry.
This is an, again, abbreviated presentation. It was presented to you at first reading at the previous council meeting. It's coming to you again for second reading, full presentation on the regular agenda, so that you can see the revisions to the site plan that have been done. I wanted to emphasize that the purpose of this conditional use permit is for the display of the portable buildings on the property for sale. The other uses, due to the C zoning, the commercial zoning on the property, are allowed and can be done there. There's a view of the portable buildings on display on the property. This is the revised site plan. The applicant and the property owners have worked with the surrounding property owners to try to come to a good site plan that will satisfy everyone's needs. And I'll go over some of the changes that have taken place since I last presented this case. The first is that the display of the portable buildings on the lot, the northern part of the property, has been reduced the total, and will be that part, the property, the portable buildings on that part of the property will be completely screened by a wood fence, along with the shipping containers. 2 shipping containers that are proposed nearby would also be completely screened by a wood fence. Originally, those were, the shipping containers and the portable buildings for sale were not proposed to be screened. So those will now be screened according to this revised site plan. 3,000 square foot area for plant sales, that hasn't changed. That's the same as before. 6 stalls for the sale of bulk topsoil, sand, and mulch were proposed in this location. There's also approximately 9 proposed for the northern end of the property along that property line. Similar landscaping as before. The driveway around the northern lot is proposed to be of railroad rock. There was some question last time what it would be composed of, granite, limestone, or gravel, or what the composition would be. And the applicants have chosen railroad rock for its lack of dust and tracking that it creates. Again, here's the 2 shipping containers and portable buildings that are to be screened entirely by an 8-foot tall wood fence.
So when you say entirely all the way around with a gate?
With a gate, correct. So you voted, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-1 in favor of this conditional use permit at its meeting. The City Council voted 5-0 in favor of it at first reading. In addition to the changes on the site plan that I just went over with you, there are 4 additional conditions that are added to the text of the ordinance granting the CUP, and that is that storage must occur only inside the primary building or inside the 2 permitted shipping containers. Semi-trailers or other movable accessory storage structures are prohibited. Auto, boat, and lawnmower parts may not be stored outside the building. Any repair work must take place completely inside the primary building, and the back of those portable buildings along Greenview act as a screening device for the property. If there's any point in time where those buildings go away, then a wood fence would be required here along Greenview as another screening element in the pink shaded area. And so now at this point I could answer any questions that the council might have on this case.
Council? Questions for Mr. Mabry?
I was just wanting to make clear that this particular property is zoned commercial, and the landscaping, auto sales type business is allowed in this zoning. And the only reason that we're going to a conditional use permit is for the sale of the portable buildings. So with that conditional use permit, some additional requirements for the property owner, as far as planning and landscaping, is being asked for, and fencing and those types of things. So if they decided not to sell portable buildings, we would not be here as far as a conditional use permit, correct?
That's correct.
But the shipping containers would still have to be screened. The shipping containers aren't allowed to be viewed from any of the streets, so they'd still have some screening requirements there. That's not covered by the CUP. That's not CUP issue, but it would, by ordinance, that's what's driving that fencing around those shipping containers.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is a question that came up at our last meeting, and we have gone back and looked at it, and we really do not have those kind of screening requirements now. We're actually going to come back and propose those to you. So that's additional protection.
Business move some shipping containers to behind their buildings at one point.
Right. So that is additional protection that
they're willing to
that they're doing under this ordinance.
So with the CUP, we can require that. So just somewhat there.
Okay, good. All right. Other questions from the council? We will go ahead and allow a public hearing on this item again. This is the second reading, not posted for a public hearing, but in as much as there's been quite a bit of dialogue that's gone on this and concern, we'll go ahead and allow that. And we'll start with Mr. Cy Long, who's here on behalf of the owner, and let Mr. Long open up the comments.
My name is Cy. We're the ones asking for the conditional use permit to sell the portable buildings. Again, we thought that the portable buildings would complement a lawn and garden center. Lowe's sells backyard portable garden shed type buildings just like the ones we want to sell. Also, just to reaffirm that it is our intention to keep a very neat and clean operation. We don't want a sloppy operation. We want it to be attractive for the consumers to want to come in and visit us and buy from us, hopefully. The couple of questions that came up at the last hearing, I guess, were the material for the wraparound driveway out in the field there. Decided on a ballast railroad rock type material. It does not crush and it is not dusty. Same material that the railroad used. They run trains on them and it does not crush. That's going to, like I said, prevent dust and won't allow any kind of mud or anything to come back onto the driveway, which could lead onto the street. Around the metal containers, it's been in conversation with a couple of people to screen those with an 8-foot privacy fence all the way around them. That will screen the containers themselves, but also will allow us room in between the containers to store anything that may be considered an eyesore, pallets that we get back from grass deliveries or lawnmowers that we have there that are dropped off that we try to salvage parts off of for service reasons. So that'll help us keep a good housekeeping there behind the building also to be good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. We want to fit into that area. Also up in I guess the south, this corner here, we thought about it and thought that it would be good to move that portable building display back to get it off of that main corner for visibility and just for a better appearance. And just if there was any other questions that we could answer for you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Questions? Okay. Mr. Vaughn? Thank you. I'm sorry about that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. We've talked about this several occasions, and we also had a meeting with Trey Galloway and Don Ringler, who has the property. And we've got a little bit more of a comfort zone, I guess you could say, with some of the issues at hand, understanding that the landscaping issue is kind of a moot point. The thing that revolves around the questioning is the conditional use permit. And I think the word conditional is very important here because I think in the first meeting that we had, someone mentioned that conditional would mean that if it didn't adhere to some of the preamble of what needed to be out there and how it needed to be maintained, that permit could be pulled, which is a nice safety valve. Mr. Ringler assured us that it was not good as far as the city because he would make sure that things were rectified and justified long before it got to that. And speaking with Cy and the trade over there, I think they have a good plan. They have brought to the table a few issues, tried to answer those. The larger concern, obviously, is that this operation is at a very focal, very key point intersection here in the city of Temple. And some of the things we spoke about earlier, and then which came up just a moment ago, is maybe some of the lack of definitive access to these permits has not been established. So maybe in the not too distant future, something will be arrived at
which looks at some of these conditional use permits, such as the portable buildings, and what that connotes and how it can be extended to so many other issues, would be brought to the forefront, and some of these screening issues would be decided sooner rather than later, and they could plan, and the homeowners in and around there, the property owners, could see the issue firsthand, how it will be handled. So like I say, we've gotten a better comfort zone. Everyone's interested in their own property values, and rightly so. That's what it's about. We think that, having said all that, the organization which they set the site in with the screening and the Connex buildings, they also mentioned that they might paint them brown at some point in time to get them a little bit more indefilade. And they also talked about in the 6-foot chain link fence, where they're going to have landscaping and trees, that they might do some planting outside of the chain link fence so as to create some shadowing and some screening in addition to what's inside the chain link fence. I think all these are good moves and good parts. And as the operation goes forward, I'm sure the city will look at the progress of how the rock base is holding up, and the ingress and egress, and the effect on the service roads in the Greenview area out there. We all want it to be a nice, tidy thing. That is a happening place, as the old cliche goes, and we'd like for things to happen sooner rather than later, because that adds value to the whole community. And so, having said that, we appreciate y'all's effort and their effort in trying to agree to some compromised positions in having this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Anyone else care to address the council? If you state your name and address for the record at the beginning of your comment. How are you? Good to see you, Mr.
I'm Darren. I am an owner of Wildflower Country Club. And one of the concerns that I have in talking to...
Could you state your address for us?
The address?
Your address.
My address is 4109 Sunflower Lane.
Thank you, sir.
And we pass by there almost every day, and we look at things. And I have been talking to our neighbors, and one of the things that I am kind of concerned about is public safety. If we're going to be expanding this particular operation, I'm just wondering, how we're going to be dealing with, the security aspect of things, and things could happen in that area that we don't know of. We have a lot of neighbors that walk around that area, and it could create some issues for us. So I'm kind of curious about how we're going to deal with from a security standpoint and a public safety standpoint on this particular business. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Mr. Long, could you come back up just a second?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming back up. Sorry. To address Mr. Ng's question and comment in public safety, I know there's a lot of lighting in and around the property there. Is the intention to make sure that lighting stays on after hours?
Yes, with vehicle sales, normally those lights are, every single one of them's on for a longer period of time. Run them till around midnight until they shut off, and then, of course, the sunlight will come back up around 7:30 or 7 o'clock or so. On the landscape side, we would plan to cut them back to keeping half of them on to save our utility bill, but that's something else that we can, I'm sure we can
But the point is, it's a well-lit
It stays lighted, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Certainly in a time where people might be out walking, even in the dark.
Yes, sir. And our whole perimeter, we lock our gates at night, and hopefully that's a good sign to stay off the property while we're closed. And then we'll have a perimeter, some kind of barricade around the field part.
Okay.
Should be a deterrent.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Other questions?
Yes, what about the containers? Are they to be painted
Brown is what we agreed on. an 8-foot privacy fence, and those containers are right at 8 foot tall. But go ahead and paint the upper part of them brown, or any part that could possibly show paint brown, so they look a little more natural and not so red, I guess. And that fence will do 4 sides, and during our operation hours, they will be open, but at night they'll be closed. And the gates around them will be closed also.
Great. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? How are you tonight? Good. Ms. Snodgrass?
I am Cindy Snodgrass. I am the president of the Wildflower Homeowners Association. My address is 4508 Sunflower Temple. I am here along with other members of Wildflower just to show our concern for this. We want new businesses and want businesses to be successful. We're certainly, thrilled that they are trying to do that. We are just concerned about the looks of things, and I'm glad to hear, they're going to keep the lights on, and everything that I've heard so far tonight I'm very impressed with. I guess my concern is just to ask the city to continue to monitor and be sure that the special use permit and the controls that we have in place are enforced and down the road. They started sort of with one little thing, and then other things were added, and we'd just like to be sure that the city is going to monitor and be sure that it does look appropriate, and we want them to be good neighbors.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If no one else wishes to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council comments or your pleasure for action?
I'm sorry, I got in kind of late on something. I wanted to address Jane. No, I'm sorry, Kate. Is that still possible?
No, ma'am. That action has already been taken on it. On item 4, Council, your pleasure.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval on second reading of the item considering the conditional use permit for the display in the commercial district of Lot 1, Block 1, Wildflower. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Dunn? Aye. Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Item 5 is a first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit to allow a package store with alcoholic beverage sales for off-premise consumption on the south one-half of Lot 1, Block 292-1, Temple Original at 1 North 6th Street. Mr. Mabry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item, if all goes as scheduled, will come to you again for second reading and final action on June 17th. This purpose of this conditional use permit is for a package store. The property is at East Central and 6th Street. The property is zoned Central Area, which is the downtown zoning district, basically. The applicant and owners have executed an off-site parking agreement that I'll go into a little bit later to allow for parking for the business. The Planning and Zoning Commission, when it voted on this, voted to recommend denial of the conditional use permit due to some concerns about parking and about just the general location of the proposed package store. On the future land use and character map, the property is designated as auto urban commercial. On the thoroughfare plan, it is at the intersection of an arterial street, which is Central, and a collector street, which is 6th Street. A 6-inch water and 6-inch sewer line serves the property. This is an aerial showing the subject property in red hatch marks. The area that is proposed for the parking agreement for the off-street parking to serve the property is shown in the black dots on the screen. This aerial has been modified to also show some of the uses that are in the area. To the north is a duplex. The building that's providing the parking agreement is currently vacant. There's some other vacant properties in the area. The Bell County Annex is to the southwest of the property, and then there's just various other uses in the area. This shows the on-the-ground photos for the surroundings. There is a parking lot across Central Avenue to the south, the vacant building across the alley to the east, the duplex to the north, and then another parking area across 6th Street to the west. This is a on-the-ground view of the alley and the proposed parking area for the liquor store, just shown in red on the screen. To the left is the back of the proposed package store, the alley, and then the parking area. This is taken from East Central. There are several standard CUP, conditional use permit, criteria or conditions that go with any conditional use permit proposal and that are for you to consider in making your decision. I'll go over those. The first one has to do with compatibility with the surrounding properties and that it wouldn't diminish the property values. The proposal would use an empty building, providing a commercial use for the area. The second criteria is that it wouldn't impede future development of the property. It's I guess you'd say an infill or filling in a vacant building. So it kind of, in a sense, doesn't apply. Adequate utilities and drainage and access serves the property is the third criteria for your, generally for conditional use permits. And as I said, there's a 6-inch water line and 6-inch sewer line serving the property. The location of driveways and parking spaces provides for safe movement. There's the parking agreement that I've mentioned would allow room for 10 parking spaces that would be off the street. When I show one of the site plans that have been considered in the next couple slides, you'll see that there's also some on-street parking that is available along Central for the property. Nuisance prevention of odors, fumes, dust, noise, and vibration is another thing to consider, and that would be more, I guess, of a code enforcement issue if later on when the business were established, if one of these became a problem, then like with all conditional use permits, the permit could be revoked and by the council for the package store. Lighting shouldn't trespass onto surrounding properties. Any signs that are on the property will be required to have shields so that spillover would be limited. And then that there's sufficient landscaping and screening to ensure harmony and compatibility with the surroundings. There, in the next couple slides, when I show the site plan, you'll see where landscaping is proposed for the property. There are also package store standards specific to package stores. A lot of them are more geared toward a new building, a new ground-up construction of a package store, but some of them would still apply in this case. There is no pickup window proposed, so numbers 3 and 4 and 5 do not apply. Parking is required in a ratio of 1 per 250 square feet, and the attempt is for the parking agreement to take care of that requirement. Window signs are prohibited, and signs must be turned off after business hours so that you don't have the light trespass and the potential nuisance that they might cause. This is on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the original site plan that was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission showing landscaping and trees along the Central Avenue frontage and along the North 6th Street frontage. The door on the 6th Street side is proposed to be not used, so no access from that door. The access to inside the building would be along Central, here where I'm hovering the mouse. After discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they didn't approve either of these drawings, again, they voted for denial, they recommended denial of this, but one of the discussions that took place at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting was to utilize some of the parking here in the right-of-way where we could fit 6 spaces and a handicap space along Central, which is outside of the normally traveled portion of Central, and then keep the landscaping here along 6th Street. Still, even on the alternative plan that I'm showing on the right, there would still be no door access along 6th. The access would still be along Central Avenue in this alternative. 10 notices were mailed out to surrounding property owners. 1 sent in a notice for agreement, and 3 sent in notices for disagreement for the proposal. When staff presented the case to the Planning and Zoning Commission, staff recommended approval of the case with the standard conditional use permit conditions that apply in relation to public safety and the ability of the council to revoke the conditional use permit if any rules were broken. The site plan is part of the ordinance that would grant this conditional use permit. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended on a vote of 5-3 for denial of the conditional use permit due to concerns with the off-site parking agreement across the alley and the location generally of the package store east of the core downtown area. The council, in making its decision, can choose to consider only those minimum requirements for a conditional use permit, or may add additional conditions that have not yet even been discussed or shown on the site plan that I presented. A reminder that this item requires 4 affirmative votes from the council in order to overrule the denial recommendation that the P&Z gave at its meeting. At this point, I could answer any questions that the council might have on this case.
How many parking places are required for that size building?
For the retail space of 2,500 square feet plus a warehouse space of 1,500, the retail would require 10. The warehouse would require, the parking ratio for warehouse space is 1 per 5,000, and staff's opinion was that was on such a low end of the 5,000 that we would require 10 parking spaces in all to accommodate the proposal, which is what there is room for in the off-site agreement.
So you have 7 on Central, and then you said 10 in back?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
There's 7 parking spaces on this drawing on Central?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you would have 10 at the back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Those 10 parking in the back, are they only for the use of the package store, or are they currently serving other?
Well, the building the property that they're on is vacant. The agreement is for the package store to use the parking. If that building were to become occupied, I'll try to get to a good photo. There is also parking on the side here of the building that isn't part of the agreement shown on the aerial.
So that's not being used by that auto shop or auto sales?
Not to my knowledge.
What is the zoning in this area? Is this Central District?
Central area, yes, sir.
So is not the parking lot across the street available? And I mean, it's public
I
parking.
believe that came up at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is a public parking area owned by the city for parking downtown. There's one here across Central, and there's one here across 6th Street. I believe it could be used by anyone, patrons of the package store, or, for the Bell County Annex, or for...
It's just city public?
Yes.
Okay. And so in Central District, for this building, for this use, it has to have its own designated parking?
Right. The standards particular to a package store require...
It's the package store that drives that.
Right, yes.
Central District zone. Okay.
Will this building have a loading dock?
When we get to the site plan for that. The applicant might be able to answer this better. There is the alley to the rear, and there is, if you can see on the screen,
the picture shows the loading dock. There you go. You can see right behind that telephone pole.
Okay.
There's a drive.
Be large vehicles that will be delivering the product that will go in there, and so, am I correct in assuming that it'll go through that door?
I would assume that, and probably the applicant can expand on that, but it would appear it would make sense that would be how that would be used.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions before we go to the public hearing? Ms. Graham, any comments do you have for us going on? Okay. This item requires a public hearing. We're posted for that hearing, and I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak before the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record prior to making your comments. Good evening, sir.
My name is John Mark Johnson. I own the duplex that's directly beside it. The legal description, I believe, is 3 North 6. The actual address is 5 and 7 North 6 for the duplex. I have some concerns about, it's a vacant building and something needs to be done, but I do have some concerns of being a package store. When it comes to what they're talking about, off-site parking, it's hard to tell from this picture here, but the off-site parking, if you actually go look at it and you kind of tell from the picture, there's a concrete slab of what I guess a building that was taken down, and there's a drop-off, and then part of it is, so this is a concrete slab here, which has a drop-off, and this, they're going to have to do a lot of work to get safe parking. And also about doing the parking, I don't know what the city issue is on this about any parking, but I don't know what the city liability of people that are crossing the alley, or tripping and falling or whatever, crossing a city alley to go to a business. Now, if you show the front of my duplex, there's a picture. The front of my duplex, which is right here. The other concern I have is, and it was a small problem, and it was through the years when it was a Thomas Hardware, of people that would pull in, they couldn't find a parking space. What's the first thing they do? They come in and park, they block where my tenants can't park in the park to go into their duplex. And I guess there was some concern when they did the zoning. I guess he discussed it, but I guess they're going to go ahead and seal this off here on the front part here with, I guess grass or something. And then, I may be mistaken, but I thought somebody brought up during the zoning deal that if you try to park a car there, because I guess when they widen Central and stuff, the car's too long. Once the car sticks out about that too far, and it'll be sticking out the street. I may be wrong with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions, comments for Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Magley, what are the lengths of the parking on Central?
Of the parking spaces that Mr. Johnson just referred to, what are the lengths of those spaces?
This was, on this drawing, these spaces were added to scale, on the actual hard copy of the drawing, the scale is 1 inch is 20 feet, and so when these were put in, they were given a standard length of 18 feet for parking, or standard depth of 18 feet and 9 feet wide for a parking space. So according to the scale that the survey was done on, the standard parking stall size would fit there, since ours are 18 feet deep by 9 feet wide.
Thank you.
So that parking is in the city right-of-way, basically? It's not on the property at all, actually?
The lot, it's a tiny bit on the private property, but it's on the majority of the space, of each space, is in the untraveled portion of the right-of-way. The property line is this thickish line that's running along the mouse pointer right now.
So with these two plans, is it an either-or plan, or which one do they want to do?
It's to show you what was originally presented at Planning and Zoning Commission, and then what was a discussion that the Planning and Zoning Commission had as far as how to an alternate drawing is on the right. The applicant can probably express which one they're preferring. It's just giving you two options, and you can modify either one of these or as you see fit.
So I presume it's permissible to do the parking there, and we wouldn't have shown it or be proposing it if it wasn't on that public right.
It is, and the parking agreement would still be in place regardless. It's an executed agreement, so whether either option, that's why it's on both drawings, off-site parking here would be in place either way. And of course,
I'm sorry, Mayor, but on parking from an intersection, I thought you could only allow an opening to start from an intersection from the PT or PC a certain distance, and it could only be an opening of 40 feet or less off of a roadway. I mean, you have to come into a driveway, into a parking lot. I didn't know that you could have parking in the city right-of-way and have a lay-down curb for a distance greater than 40 feet.
I'm not aware of that.
I'm talking about now.
I would say that it is not uncommon in this central area, just like in front of the City Hall, or around some of the restaurants and Empire Seat and areas like that, to have public parking that is partially in the right-of-way, partially on private property.
I think what the councilman is referencing is we do have standards that for curb cuts of a maximum of 40 feet, and there are some setbacks from corners. In this particular case, it's an existing condition, and that's why it's able to be reflected this way. If a new development was coming in, then it would not meet our development in that regard.
So those parking spaces effectively exist there today, is what you're saying?
I didn't know. I thought that was going to alter that. That's not being altered at all?
Well, those parking places exist there, and the applicant can talk about it, but I think they were there for Thomas Hardware. I mean, you can go there and you can see the parking places. The proposal on the left, as we've talked about, was what was presented to Planning and Zoning Commission, which would remove those parking places and required landscaping both on the 6th Street there, on that side where the original or current entrance to the building is, and on the central side. Would have removed all that parking and put landscaping there. And as Brian is telling you, during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, there was some discussion with the applicant at the podium by members of the Planning and Zoning Commission on the alternative, which is shown on the right, with allowing that parking to continue as it has been. The one thing that I think I would correct on the drawing, I happened to be at that P&Z meeting, was I don't think the applicant or what was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission had the front door on the central side. I think it still showed the front door on the 6th Street, if that's 6th Street there. And that moving the door to the Central Avenue side came up as part of the discussion about, well, what if we allowed on-street parking on Central Avenue?
Anyone else wishing to address the council on the side?
Alan Talley, 5004 Wildflower Lane, Temple, Texas. Glad to be in Temple. First of all, I want to say, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I appreciate just this time to share my feelings. First of all, I know that you know that the Planning and Zoning Commission disapproved of this, even though it's met all the ordinances and gone along with it well, but I have a different issue with it. Even though I'm pro-business, and I certainly don't want any empty buildings here, especially in central town of the town of Temple. I'm nervous, I don't know why. But it's an ethical thing with me, and that is I can't understand anyone wanting to place a liquor store, if you don't mind me calling that, right next to a residence. Just doesn't make sense. It's an ethical thing. And then within, I would say, a 3-block area, there are 4 churches that from time to time have youth there and children there, and the play lots in the area. And we know that anytime there's a liquor store, there's always the potential of having individuals go in and drink. And there's that little space that they're showing you between the duplex and the building that they can hang out in. I just think it's wrong ethically, and that's my only objection to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Others? Yes, sir.
My name is Rodney Haynes, 1415 Martin Luther King, Mayor and Council. Been in that resident 34 years. Seeing the streets up and down. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the other bars that's already there that are open, that I have to go and sit down and drink at and possibly maybe getting a WDI or something. I'm okay with going there, picking up what I want and going back home. And my safety there, if you can't be saved by a police station that should be controlling the area, then where are you going to be safe at? So, I mean, just look at it like that. And one thing, like the drive time, gas to go from over there to back. I mean, people drink sociable, and it's okay to drink sociable. And to have convenience, it's okay too. So, I agree with you. I wouldn't mind having something close by. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Mike Grisham, Grisham Associates Real Estate, 5550 Elm Grove Road in Belton, and I'm the real estate broker just handling this property. I've had it for sale for about 1.5 years, something like that. And this is the only, we have a prospective buyer wanting to do this at the moment, and is the only prospective buyer that we've had that was interested in purchasing. Clear up a couple of items. The property behind the subject was recently purchased and is currently occupied. The building where the parking agreement is, and it's occupied by a company called Audio Power. And they were over on 2nd Street, over near the feed store, and they purchased and moved over there. And what they do is they provide surveillance and monitoring equipment for inside and outside. And that's who the parking agreement is with. on right here on this slide, this is the city parking lot. The angle parking on Central was introduced but not discussed at the P&Z meeting. I introduced it, but we didn't get any discussion on it.
Can you come back to the mic and you point that out? Thank you, sir.
I introduced the possibility of angle parking, which there had been some discussion with the planning and zoning department, but at the meeting it wasn't discussed. It was introduced, but we didn't discuss that. It wasn't an option really that was on the table. That drawing that showed that here tonight that drawing was not there at that meeting. Just the drawing on the left was the only option that was discussed. The angle parking here is what we would prefer if it's possible, and we do have still in place with that the parking agreement behind. If we could go back to that other slide where the parking spaces, it shows that city parking lot.
The aerial.
Thank you. Yeah, there it is. The parking right here, this is a city parking lot. This is angle parking right here, that the city angle parking. It sticks out much further in the street than what this does here at the building. I mean, it's all the way down there. If you stand up at the corner over here and just look that way, you can see how much further over the city our angle parking would be than what the city's angle parking is currently. The loading of merchandise would not be large trucks like a semi or anything like that. We're, kind of like a bread truck, or maybe a little bigger than a bread truck. But anyway, they're not semis. Also wanted to point out that it wasn't discussed at the P&Z meeting that the parking for the duplex next door is actually city parking. That's not the duplex. They don't own that parking. That's city parking. There is room behind that duplex if they were interested in putting some parking back there, which there's access off of the alleyway for them to be able to do that, to have their own parking. But the parking currently for that duplex is actually city parking. But we feel that by putting the door over on Central, that would really, people probably wouldn't park in front of the duplex anyway, because that'd be a pretty good walk whenever there's parking close by there, the entrance. And the other item, the duplex is central area zoning as well. That whole block, the duplex is the only building that's not a commercial building in that whole city block.
Mr. Grisham, the parking area, the 10 spots that you're looking to lease behind the audio power facility, is there site work planned there to make that access to that parking better than to come in from the alley? And am I looking at a fence there? Is that going to remain, that cycling fence, and so that all the access will come on and off that alley?
We haven't discussed with the owner of that building removing that fence. That's certainly something that we can try to accomplish, and it would certainly help the parking situation if that wasn't there. Currently, they are parking there in that spot. all the way across the back of the building. People park there. Most of the people there's not very many people that use the parking that work there. Most of their work is away from there. It's at businesses and people's homes is where they're doing their work. So there's not much parking. The owner of the building is not using much of the parking. But I have seen his vehicle parked there behind the building several times. But in answer to your question, I'm certain that, and our prospective buyer who is here would be willing to improve access to that parking area to where there's not, drop downs and stuff. I think there's a curb there. So anyway, I believe he would.
And there was one other question, and this is not for you, Mr. Grisham. Comment made about possibility of drinking in that establishment, and that's not permitted. This is for off-premise consumption, and so there's no drinking that would occur in that establishment. Is that correct, Mr. Graham?
That's correct.
Okay.
The building that's behind there, is that considered warehouse? So if it's
this building right here?
Yes.
They have.
What's their parking requirement? What I'm asking. Getting to.
I was trying to kind of figure out what it is they do. If it were a warehouse, it would be one space per 5,000 square feet.
Does that apply to a warehouse? It's not a package store. It's Central District, and do they have a parking requirement for that building?
Correct. If they are central area, then that use, regardless of what it is, doesn't have a minimum parking requirement.
So they could use anything?
But they have parking in the front on Martin Luther King.
I believe so.
That was a major issue with the planning and zoning, was the parking. And also the parking lot across the street, across Central, is usable for those people too, but there's not that many people parking there that work at that building.
You made the comment, and I know Mr. Willis is here, the applicant, but in as much as you're speaking to at this point, no objection to improving that parking area?
No.
Because we can make that part of our issue here for the issue of the CUP is that parking be improved. Certainly enhance that area, that neighborhood, that block, and from a safety perspective, and I agree, with that curb that's there, being a trip hazard, I don't know what the lighting situation is in that area. Might even need to be some lighting enhancement off the back of the Thomas Hardware building, the proposed building, so that it would make it a safer area.
And I believe there is
if there's no objection to that, we might make that a part, if it's council's desire to make that a part of the CUP.
No objection. And also, I believe that they're planning on putting some monitor stuff out there too. And that always helps.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Grisham. Anyone else? Mr. Willis?
I'm Richard Willis. I live at 6819 Jupiter, and Honorable Mayor and the City Council. I'm sorry. Considering the parking, I've owned a liquor store 25 years. You only have 2 or 3 cars at a time. You don't have no big bunch of cars at one time in a package store. And most times you got one customer at a time. They walk in and walk out. And as far as the children, they cannot come in. There is a law, you got to be 21 to go in a package store. And as far as the parking, like I say, 3 or 4 cars at the most. And The loaded at the back, they're not 18-wheelers, they're small trucks. Do you know how much liquor you can put on 18-wheelers? About $10 million. That's how much liquor they can haul. If you ever been in a liquor store, a bottle of Crown Royal is $55. Don't take many of them, make $1 million. But I just appreciate any help we can get. And I'll take care of the lighting, I'll do it all. I've never had a violation in 25 years. And I will take care of the area. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else wish to speak? Sir, please.
I've listened, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I've listened to everybody discuss.
If you'd state your name, sir.
I'm
address.
Jerry White, 17 South 36th Street, Temple, Texas.
Thank you, sir.
I grew up in that area. If you could bring that photo back up.
The aerial photo?
Yeah, that one right there. Thank you. I understand they're saying it's a drop-off and all that. So I feel like if you're going to own your own business, you own your insurance, you're going to fill that in for your customers where you won't be sued or liable for damages or injury. If they put lighting in the back, of course they don't have lighting back there for security reasons. And 2 blocks over is the Temple Police Department. Last night on the news, we just bragged about crime being lowered in Temple. So I think our police department is doing an excellent job if our crime rate is going down. So and the biggest discussion they have is about parking. There's not that many people that come to a liquor store at once. That's means during the holidays or during some special occasion. And most people, we have the big parking lot right behind the Goodwill Center. We also have parking adjacent to this building right here on Central, which I know for a fact holds 10 cars. So why is this such a hard, I can understand if the people that's buying this property, if they're made to fill in that with some kind of crushed rock and pave it, it should be okay to put that building there. And also, I feel like it'll be closer to the residents in that area to purchase their package stores things that they need. That way they don't have to travel way across town. And some people in that neighborhood doesn't own vehicles. A lot of people walk in that area. And like I said, I know for a fact that Temple Police patrols that area heavily, on bikes and on foot. So I have no objection about the liquor store the package store being put there, placed there. And I think it'll be an in and out thing. Because I know when I go to the package store, I'm there no more than 15, 30 minutes. And I know I'm going in and I'm out. So I think it's good. I'm for it.
Very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Can I ask Brian a question? Brian, go back to the picture that shows the front of the duplex. That duplex is completely screened from all of this activity by the north side of that building. It's set back from the front of the building, and they have, it looks to me like that would, if a hardware store was there with the door on 6, that might have been a problem, but if they move it on to the door on the central side, I think they'll be less disturbed than they've been before.
I think that's part of the reason for recommending no access from that door.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the council on this item?
May I please speak to the council from here, please?
Let me have a microphone brought to you if you don't mind. Thank you, Fred.
Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, legal personnel, and all the commissioners that are here from the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Carmela Thomas, and we own the building. And I know that Richard Lewis is an excellent businessman, yeah, and he'll make lots of money for the city. Sales tax money, he'll generate a lot of sales tax money, which I know the city could use, and wisely too. So I'm respectfully requesting the council to consider voting yes on the conditional use permit. Thank you very much, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Any questions for Ms. Thomas? Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this item?
Are we allowed to speak again?
Certainly.
First of all, I hope all of you council people have driven by there and gone up the alley and seen that. And if there's only normally 3 cars that come there at the most, then what about all the business that comes, the walk-ins, and where they're walking to afterwards? That's my concern. Are they walking and staying in this little area between the old hardware store and the duplex? Will they be there drinking? Will they be walking other places of the city drinking with their bottles? I can't believe that anyone here would want that next to their residence. If you could vote that way, then okay, but that's my own feeling. So again, thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you, Dr. Talley. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. My name is Richard Lewis. I live at 6914 Old Waco Lane. In response to this gentleman right here, my only concern is we're taking advice on what people do in their own neighborhood from someone that lives at Wildflower. I'd rather hear from the citizens and the people that live in that portion, and I think we've had 2 people endorse it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else? Mr. Johnson.
To speak again.
Sure, Mr. Johnson.
We're talking the different stuff. I do have concerns. I don't know if there's a photo showing the back of my duplex.
I don't think that's the closest one you've got.
I'm really concerned that people
aren't going to the aerial. Go to the aerial. There you go.
Okay. You can see where this parking is proposed here, where my duplex is. Even though you may put an entrance there, people are still going to try to walk and try to find, or they're going to go here. There's no telling where they're going to go. It's kind of confusing that you have to park over here or to find the entrance. If, like the other gentleman was saying, well, I'm trying to figure out how my parking here at the front is part of city park. It may be, but if I move and put my parking here, if they do this, I'm going to put a fence there to keep people from walking through. So if I put a fence there, then if he's talking about the parking, I don't see any way I can do the parking on there with this proposed, because I would have to put a fence to keep people from walking through.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else? Mr. Bishop.
That brings up a good point. It's between the duplex and the building is only maybe 5 or 6 feet there, could put up a fence to screen people, if there's a concern about people walking through there, just a little chain link fence right there could eliminate that completely. That's just an idea.
Now, would you be willing to work with that gentleman and as part of your improvements, put that little piece of fence up?
Yes, we'd be willing to do that.
Mr. Bishop, can I ask a question? You perhaps will know the answer. On the same picture that you see here, across the street, there's a convenience store.
Correct.
Do you know, do they sell beer or wine? Yes. Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, any comments or questions? Otherwise, your pleasure on motion, first reading for the conditional use permit for this facility.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Can I clarify that an approval, unless it's amended or changed in any way, is the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission was for denial, so a supermajority will be required for me to approve it. And you're approving the original site plan if you're approving it without any modifications or changes.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Mabry. Is that the desire of the motion to use the original site plan, or do you want the alternate reflecting the parking along Central Avenue?
Yes. Remove that we approve it on the second reading and with the alternative drawing or the alternative plan.
And did you want to include in that motion anything relating to improvements of the off-site parking area?
I just can't see the parking is a problem at all.
They've got to have that, and that parking is required.
I know,
As a result.
it's there. There's 7 on
You're making the
Central,
motion, so
there's
if you don't
10
want
in
to do
the
it,
back.
that's up to you.
There's 2 parking lots, city parking lots. I think that's adequate.
Good. So your motion is for approval on the first reading and reflecting the alternate layout.
Are we on the second reading?
No, we're actually
On the first reading.
on the first
Okay,
reading.
on the first reading.
Was that your motion?
Yes.
We have a motion for the alternate plan for the first reading.
Yeah, I just want to clarify or ask Ms. Luna, the Mayor Pro Tem, if she's aware. The alternate plan still includes the additional parking across the alley, because our ordinance does require the 1 parking place per 250 square feet of retail space. So
I realize that. So there's 10 in the back, 7 on Central. To me, that's adequate good.
So that motion, is there a second? If there's no second, this motion dies for lack of a second. Next item, first reading of a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit, CUP, to allow the sale of all alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption in a restaurant where the gross revenue from alcoholic beverages is 50% or less than the total gross revenue of the restaurant, located on Lot 1, Block 1, Shoney's Commercial Edition at 411 North General Bruce. Ms. Lowry.
Good evening. Let's see. Okay, and tonight's conditional use permit is at 411 North General Bruce Drive, and the second reading for this item will be June the 17th. And I have on the screen, I have the background for this particular property. In case the property is a zone general retail district, and the request is for alcohol sales less than 50% of the total gross revenue in a restaurant. That restaurant is shown on the screen here, and this request does conform to the conditional use permit regulations. And at the planning and zoning meeting for this particular case, the commissioners did express interest or concerns about the landscaping for this little strip of grass that is adjacent to North General Bruce Drive. And so the landscaping would be subject to the I-35 corridor regulations. This is an aerial showing you a little bit more of the surroundings of this particular property. This is the existing vacant restaurant on site. The property does have an entrance onto West Calhoun Avenue as well as General Bruce Drive. And Johnson Brothers Ford is to the north. We have undeveloped property to the east. And then we have a Wendy's restaurant to the south. And then, of course, I-35 frontage road. And then this is just a bigger view of what I just explained. This is the Johnson Brother Ford to the north, and this is the actual site that we're here today to look at. This is the Wendy's restaurant to the south of the site. This is West Calhoun Avenue. This is the La Quinta Hotel, and then this is Long John Silver's further to the south. And then to the west is I-35, and then we have some undeveloped property to the west. The land use and character map designates this as auto urban commercial, and the property, as I stated previously, is zone general retail. And so this request does comply with the thoroughfare plan and infrastructure needs, having access to North General Bruce Drive, IH-35, West Calhoun Avenue, and there are available public facilities to serve the site. This is some elevations that we received from the applicant of what the new building would look like. They are going to renovate the current building, and it's a little hard to read, but this would be called Mad Mungo's, and it's a Mongolian grill. And so this is what it would look like from the front along General Bruce Drive, and then this would be the right elevation that you would see from West Calhoun. And this is their site plan that they supplied. You can see the existing restaurant here with all the parking, and you can tell that there is circulation throughout the whole site going through Calhoun Avenue, and there are two entrances from North General Bruce Drive. And then this is a floor plan of the proposed restaurant with an entrance coming off from the front parking lot area. And this request does meet the conditions required for reviewing a conditional use permit, and those concerns address compatibility with surrounding properties, nuisance prevention measures, parking lot, traffic flow, and lighting, and let's see. And then the zoning ordinance has some additional general conditions for conditional use permits, and some of those do involve compliance with the TABC. So the applicant is already working with TABC to make sure that they meet all the guidelines as well as our guidelines for conditional use permits. We did send out notification letters to 6 properties within this area, within 200 feet, and we received one response in agreement, and we did not receive any in opposition to the request. And at the May 17th, 2010 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this request, and so I have those conditions on the screen. Basically, it complies with the future land use and character map. It complies with the thoroughfare plan and has available public facilities. And The site plan would serve as the exhibit for this conditional use permit, as well as conditions that the landscaping would be subject to the IH 35 corridor regulations. And so that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, Ms. Larrabee.
You're welcome.
Council, questions for Ms. Larrabee?
Has this building been anything, it was originally Shoney's, obviously from
That's correct.
Shoney's subdivision. Has there been anything else in there?
Yes.
Ponchos.
It was Shoney's, and then after that, I believe it was Jim's Restaurant. It's been Ponchos. I think the last business that was in there was an Asian cuisine buffet type of a restaurant.
And none of those had a conditional use permit?
That's correct.
Interesting. Okay. I had something else. I had a senior moment here. I'll have that.
It's been a long evening.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? If not, this item requires a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Anyone wishing to speak to the council on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Scott Montsegal. I live on North 18, and I'm representing the buyers of this property, and would be glad to answer any questions that council may have on the concept or what our plans are. So,
Just curious on the concept, is it a true Mongolian grill where they're doing the cooking in kind of a central area and you take your bowl and
news grill,
Yeah.
fire and ice, and like that. So it's going to be
quite
a central entertaining type concept, and the alcohol is probably going to be about 15 to 20% of what the food sales are. So, so I think it's with the grill roof and make it a little more attractive, and so
a very unique restaurant concept.
We're excited about it. So, but to answer Councilman Janczak's, I guess all those concepts that were there before, the typical concept they don't serve alcohol. They just like any fast food. So. Any other questions?
That was Sambo's when we first came here.
Yeah. A long time ago.
Yeah. That was a few years back.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matzinger. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure, first reading.
Motion to approve, item 6.
Second.
Motion is second for approval of the CUP for the Shoney's Commercial Edition at 411 North General Bruce Drive. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Dunn. Councilmember Janczak.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lincoln.
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. Item 7, resolutions. Consider adopting resolutions appointing members of the following city boards and commissions. We have 2 different boards we're proposing to appoint two members of the Public Safety Advisory Board to fill unexpired terms through September 1st of 2010 and September 1st of 2011, and 1 member for the Animal Services Advisory Board to fill an expired term through September 1st of 2012. The Animal Services Advisory Board requires that position to be filled by someone from an animal service organization, and we do not have anyone at this point that we know of. If you do, council, certainly love to have that, but other than that, and on the members of the Temple Public Safety Advisory Board, their next meeting, I think, is Tuesday the 8th, and anybody that we appointed this evening wouldn't be able to get them notified and trained up to be able to serve anyways. And I would like to visit with our chiefs on Public Safety Advisory Board. There's some issues with Public Safety Advisory right now, some attendance and some issues that I'd personally like to, and I'd invite a council member to join me if they would like to visit with Chief Smith, Chief Wallace, and the Chair of Public Safety Advisory before our next council meeting, and then bring this back to next council meeting if you have no objection to tabling it till then, so that the appointments that we bring forward we have a better chance of having attendance because we're having some attendance problems and issues with this particular board at this time. So, So they're having a hard time making a quorum, and these two vacancies are both as a result of dismissals because of attendance issues. So, if you have no objections, Council, I'd ask that we consider tabling both of these committee appointments at this time.
Motion to table items 7A and B.
Second.
Motion is second. Thank you, Council. There's no further discussion. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Dunn?
Aye.
Councilmember Jansen?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Luna?
Aye.
Councilmember Schneider?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attendance and your participation this evening. That concludes the agenda for tonight. We are adjourned.